Right. May I invite the board, please, then to move to the next item of business, which is item 5, the strategy towards new relationships with patients and communities, and invite Tim to introduce the paper.
So, at the heart of the forward view is a commitment to transform the way in which we put citizens, communities at the very heart of decision making, of service design, and so on. And a very important commitment that we've got collectively is to do that quickly and fundamentally. And so this paper is really designed just to give a sense of the real commitment that's being made to drive that agenda as hard and as deeply as possible. NHS Citizen, which this board is aware of, is a really important initiative to sort of give people voice, particularly in relation to NHS England's own decision making, but more broadly as it goes through its kind of prototype phase across the NHS. And in fact, this morning we've just launched the online platform through which people can now join NHS Citizen and join the broader conversation. And if I may, Chairman, I'd just like to read out the URL so that members of the board and indeed others on the live stream may choose to join NHS Citizen, as I just did this morning, and it is good, really great. So it's community.nhscitizen.org.uk. community.nhscitizen.org.uk. And that may well come to be seen as quite a milestone, I think, in due course. One of the really important things about NHS Citizen, now it's beginning to demonstrate, I think, real engagement with communities right across the whole health and care spectrum, is that NHS England itself takes seriously embedding its values in its own operations. And so this board agreed at the last meeting to set up a task and finish group, which would be chaired by Victor. And since then, Victor and I and various others have led conversations with the Leadership Forum, and I was just going to hand over briefly to Victor to get his update on how he feels that's all progressing.
Well, it's progressing. we have meetings in place. I think that I'd make 3 observations. The first is that I'm really pleased to see that within NHS England there are managers and leaders who really get the link between NHS citizens and how we do things around here, how we operate and engagement. I'm hoping that they might be involved in creating the tools that enable the board to have the line of sight of what's shifted. I think the second thing I'd say is that if NHS Citizens works, and there's no reason to think that it won't, it has implications for the culture and operating practices of NHS England, because we are opening the window to the public, as we should, and the public will make, quite rightly, observations, demands, advice that we need to respond to at all levels. So I'm looking forward to doing that work. I mean, it has implications for the work we're doing on leadership and management and culture, but we've got to an exciting, I would consider, first step in that journey. And go to the website, it's cool.
Yeah, and the ask here is for members of this board to nominate themselves to join the Task and Finish group as it begins to do its work in earnest. One of the most important sort of NHS Citizen fits into a broader strategy, which is to set a new standard for patient and public participation across the health and care service. And at the root of that lies the importance of listening. We have to learn to listen much harder. And as Simon said at the Assembly meeting last year, the NHS is best when it listens hardest. So in that regard, we've also been doing an awful lot of work on, in a way, trying to design tools of insight, means of enabling frontline staff as well as ourselves to have the means by which we can indeed listen and improve services. And probably at the forefront of those initiatives is the Friends and Family Test, which again, just by coincidence today, has published the most recent results, and in which I'm amazed and delighted to say that we now have passed the 5 millionth rating that's been provided by a member of the general public on a local service. And I do think this is genuinely a sign of a kind of willingness to engage in local services, perhaps a symptom of a social movement, that we can unleash through the mechanism of the forward views transformation offer. So Friends and Family Test, at any rate, is becoming a very important source of insight for local services. There are now many examples of ways in which that data has driven real-time improvement. And I was just taken by one example, actually, which is in the paper, of tinted drinking glasses now being provided in one hospital because it emerged that people with visual impairment were not able to literally grab a glass in their hand. And although these things may sometimes seem insignificant, what we know from the reviews by Robert Francis and by Don Berwick is that it is the small things, it is the accumulation of small things that lead to disaster. And if we can be in there at the beginning, offering a level of customer service and insight, as it were, which will provide a modern approach to engagement and listening, then we may well find that we can avoid some of the tragic consequences of not being there. Just a couple of other things I'd bring the board's attention to. I'm not going to go through the entire paper in detail. I think for me personally, and I hope for people around the table, the importance of technology, in particular mobile technology, in providing a different way of offering people access to health services and enabling them to take more control for themselves, starts with people getting access to digital services in general practice. And again, I'm really pleased to tell the board that we now have more than 90% of general practices providing, in a position where they can provide online booking services to people. We've got very close to 90% of general practices able to offer the ability to online order repeat prescriptions. But for me, the most telling improvement has been the fact we've gone from a very low base in single-digit percentages to now nearly 40% of general practices offering access to online records for patients. And I think this is going to be something which has a genuinely transformational power to change the way in which people do engage with their own health and health services. Of course, the board will know we're committed to all practices offering that facility from at the end of March, and we'll also know that from April of this year we'll be the first country in the world to offer our citizens access to a very comprehensive medical record online in real time. I think probably just to conclude, the board is also asked to note and indeed agree to the memorandum of understanding with Healthwatch England. Healthwatch England, as the board will know, is an independent statutory authority hosted by the Care Quality Commission. It's a very important relationship for us. Healthwatch England it oversees an aware network of local health watchers around the country, all independent themselves, whose job is to represent the voice of the local community, the service user, in dialogue with local service providers and commissioners. The MOU, I think, marks an important moment in the development of our relationship as NHS England with Healthwatch England, and I think we're in a good place now, and I encourage the board to agree to the signing of the memorandum of understanding.
Thank you, Tim. Let me invite questions and comments from the board. David.
So I think it's a fabulous initiative, all in all of its parts. It's clearly we have a responsibility to ensure that we are responsive to and influenced by the needs of our patients and the communities we have the privilege to serve. I guess experience would suggest that when you unleash this very powerful force, it can have very positive impacts, but also expectations of what you're going to do with this information rise exponentially. So I guess my question would be, both within the provider sector and within the commissioning sector, and indeed within NHS England, to what extent is your judgment that we have the skills, capabilities, resources, etc. in place to be able to use this incredibly powerful source of insight and information as it becomes more and more prevalent?
Well, I think that's a really good challenge, and indeed one of the core opportunities we have with the new models of care work that Ian outlined is to really challenge ourselves around the kind of capabilities not only that we need to make much more intelligent use of these new insights, but also how we can support the rest of the NHS to do the same thing. And I think that is a challenge. I personally think we do need to invest more time and resource in developing that capability. You look at the way other industries work, that's been a very significant level of investment of all sorts for them. So I think we've got lots we can learn, but I think that the big opportunity we have is that we all recognise that. So I think that not only, as I say, in the context of the new models of care work, but also more broadly, I feel a sort of sense in which the leadership, both locally and nationally in the health and care system, is really conscious of the need to develop these capabilities and to take advantage of the kind of insights that are beginning to flow.
Because those insights can be truly transformative
totally
in
agree.
terms of
Yeah.
both what are small things, may seem small things on a piece of paper, but actually matter hugely
Absolutely.
to individuals in wherever they interact with the
Yeah.
NHS. And I'd really encourage us to keep thinking about how, not just at the macro level, but also at the micro level, we build this insight into the day-to-day decisioning processes.
Margaret?
Two things. The first is in connection with was it 54% of the GPs that are behind the other cohort. To what extent is their position dependent upon having to bring their infrastructure, their digital infrastructure up to speed, and what support do they need to get to the right place? Second question, or the second point, is really in connection with the memorandum of understanding with Healthwatch. Just to say that I think that it's splendid that we have this relationship outlined. It would be quite helpful, I think, just to have some sort of preamble to the memorandum to explain the almost watchdog role of Healthwatch, so that it's clearer. Because I think that sometimes that role can be misinterpreted.
Well, just to answer the first question on the digital infrastructure, so one of the often forgotten, very positive legacies of the last decade or so in terms of IT infrastructure investment in the NHS has been the fact that we have ended up with probably the world's most digitally capable primary care infrastructure. And as a result of which, oddly, it's relatively straightforward, and we've now agreed with the GP community that for them to switch on these kinds of digital services. Clearly, there are some issues around business change, so that we don't raise expectations, as David was saying, and then find that people actually, although they theoretically can say book an appointment, actually find it difficult for those appointments to be fulfilled. So I think the challenge for all of us, and working with colleagues in general practice, has been to align the digital opportunity with the, as it were, the real consumer fulfilment necessary to ensure that all, that the promise is delivered. So that's what we've been working on, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank colleagues in the BMA, RCGP, and across the general practice system for what is an astonishingly busy and stressed period for them, of in a way recognising, I think, the priority that this can deliver, not just for patients but also for their own services. So I think we feel very encouraged by the degree to which people are really engaging with this priority. And on the Healthwatch, let me take those comments away and work up some sort of additional preamble.
Myra?
It's just to add to that suggestion from Margaret that actually the relationship between Healthwatch nationally and local health watches would be helpful to be spelt out in this as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Tim. I'm quite taken. I think FFT has been a fantastic thing, and when we look back as a board to a year, 18 months ago, I think the progress that's been made on that has been really terrific. I'm quite taken also with what is being done in terms of bringing to the patient-doctor personal relationship a model of feedback along the lines that is being developed in Dartmouth College in the US, Al Malley and Jack Wenberg, and trying to understand, is this, do you envisage, the next stage of something that we might be able to develop across the country in England?
Well, I was going to come to this in the later paper, but one of the National Information Board, which was one of the bodies that feeds into the 5-year forward fee leadership, has committed the system, as it were, the Health and Care Service, to, by 2018, giving people the ability to write into their medical records, not to edit the notes of their doctors, but to write in with parity to their own records. And in essence, the reason for this is because many patient advocates, patients themselves and others wanted to develop a kind of more real-time conversation through the medium of the medical record, which is what Al is doing in Dartmouth. And so we are now developing rapidly a new approach as to how we can put that conversation at the core of care planning right across the health service. So I think there's it's an important commitment that's been made, and obviously we'll feed back to the board as we develop through experiment, how we're going to achieve it. But that is something we're very conscious of and have been, the community at large is very keen that we do start to offer.
Quite interesting, wouldn't it, to be able to develop an early pilot of this and to see how well it would embed into clinical practice.
Well, I'm hoping in conversation with colleague and and Samantha Jones and others involved in the development of the vanguards that we can build this kind of offer in really early, because there's nothing technologically complicated about it. This is all about culture change and business change and so on. So I think we should be challenging ourselves to that kind of innovation as early as possible.
Thank you. Right, you have set us a question or two for the board to consider. I think the first one is simply to invite non-executive directors if they wish to join the NHS Citizen Task and Finish group.
We've had one. The rush has been tremendous, and we've accepted her. Margaret here has joined up.
Right. Well, we don't want you to be overwhelmed, but we'll encourage others to follow Margaret's good example. We're agreeing, I think, yes, and John as well. So I'm not going to hold back until everybody's volunteered, but we'll take this incrementally, if we may. I think we've assessed progress on the other items that you've mentioned on the list here. And may I ask the board to approve the entering into of an MOU with Healthwatch?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tim.